I think we need to have a deeper and more consistent discussion about where this country's headed. Not this hit and run stuff, not to cherry pick, but a more fulsome understanding of where we're going here. William Jacobson is a great professor. He's got a great website called Legal Insurrection, and I think this paragraph sort of sums it up for me. There is a thin line in society between food and anarchy, freedom and repression, liberty and tyranny, safety and street violence. It's thinner than we want to admit, and it's being pushed to its limits on purpose by ideologues that want to deconstruct our society. Tearing down society is a dangerous game. That thin line is being obliterated in Europe, which put heavy reliance on Russian natural gas and so-called renewables, leaving those countries vulnerable to a gas cutoff, which Putin now is implementing as retaliation for Ukraine's sanctions. And what about the United States? This got me to thinking. In between our elections, a lot happens to this country that is not subject to elections and no longer subject to representative government. Did you support the hiring of 87,000 new IRS agents? Was that on some ballot somewhere? Did you support the complete disruption of energy independence and the complete attack on the combustion engine and automobiles and other vehicles that use gasoline? Did you support somehow, somewhere, or vote for open borders where fentanyl and illegal immigrants and MS-13 and drug cartels can operate freely on our border, creating anarchy, death, rape, all kinds of horrors taking place there? Did you vote for or support or even hear about a massive debt? A massive debt like the planet has never seen on top of regular spending that would affect inflation the way it does? Did somebody run for office saying that they would destroy women's sports, or you couldn't define what a woman is? And I could go on and on and on. What happens between the elections is as important as what happens on election day. We've ceased to be a representative government. So much of what's going on now in this country, the authorities, as I'll call them, they make the decisions. The bureaucracy makes the decisions. Our prosecutors and the FBI make the decisions about who we're going to select to run the Republican Party, as a perfect example. We've lost control of this country. When you watch the media, when you listen to the media, do you recognize your country? The way they yell at you? How they call you names? The way they discuss American history? We've lost control of our classrooms, where the most radical ideologues now have teaching degrees, tenure, protected by unions and the administrations. That is, the educational bureaucracy is now in control of your children's minds. Where did that happen? Did somebody support that? And so we've lost our notion of representative republicanism and constitutionalism. And what happens also under those circumstances is the growing police state. Now, what do I mean by that? Free speech is limited. You're now told what language you can and cannot use, or you're going to be destroyed, have your career ruined, or attacked viciously. When did that happen? Or now freedom of assembly. You look at January 6th, there were hundreds of thousands of people on the mall in Washington, D.C. They're now all called insurrectionists. You have tens of millions of Americans who are called semi-fascists, whatever that means, by the President of the United States and his party. Folks, it's totally out of control. And economically, look at California. What used to be the most prosperous, innovative, entrepreneur-friendly state in the country 20 years ago is now moving closer and closer to an economy akin to North Korea. They can't put the lights on at night. They can't drive their electric cars when they want to drive their electric cars. They don't have enough water. In other words, they don't have the basics. And my friend Peter Pry, who unfortunately died a few weeks ago, he warned us. He warned us what happens if the electrical grid goes down. He warned us about enemies attacking the electrical grid. But what about enemies within attacking the electrical grid? That is, putting so much power on that grid it simply cannot handle it. You'll brownouts and blackouts, automobiles that can't move, and where do we go from there? The government will start saying you can only have certain types of automobiles. It did already. Or how many automobiles you can have, or how far you can drive, or how long you can charge them up. And eventually, you can't have automobiles. You have to use public transportation. You think I'm wrong? Trust me on this. I'm not wrong. And they'll demand no more single houses in zoned areas out in the suburbs or the extra burbs. They're already doing that at HUD. So you got to live closer and closer, use public transportation where you can be more easily managed. And the whole idea of federalism is destroyed. Look, you have all these states banding together like a confederacy, 13 or 17 of these blue states, banding together to ban the combustion engine in automobiles. They don't have a plan for what happens after. So you're going to suffer. You're going to be poorer. You're going to be impoverished. And look at the food situation, the price of food, the emptying of shelves. You have ideologues making these decisions. They don't know how to run an economy. Nobody knows how to run an economy, let alone ideologues. So you have a relative handful of people deciding how we are going to live based on their ideologies, based on their belief systems. Their belief systems becomes reality for you. You have to live under these conditions. This is completely opposite of what this country was intended to be. We were supposed to have a government of limited power. Now we have a ubiquitous government. We were supposed to have a government that was created with checks and balances and left most of the decisions to the individuals, but that's not the case anymore. Everywhere you turn, there's regulations. And I want to get into this as it applies to the Department of Justice and law and order and the police state that I was talking about. This constant war on Donald Trump is a red flag to all of us. To all of us. Donald Trump is a billionaire. Donald Trump was president of the United States. He may run again. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. So all of a sudden now we're in a paper fight. Before it was January 6th. Before that it was a call to Ukraine. Before that it was the emoluments clause. Before that it was his taxes. Before that, it's always a before that and an after that. Because he's the most victimized individual in the country. Why? Because they're setting an example for you, Mr. and Mrs. Average American. They want you to understand that it is a fool's errand to resist. You accept their language, you accept what they're doing to the country, you accept their electoral results, you accept their court decisions, even though they accept none of that, should they lose. Now let's talk quickly about Mar-a-Lago. I want to get into this. People are saying, we need to indict Donald Trump. It's clear that he violated the law. He stole the documents. He violated the Espionage Act. He didn't violate the Espionage Act. But I will tell you, people who did violate the Espionage Act, certainly in spirit, if not in reality. So there's a leak to the Washington Post last week. Now, there were no leaks out of Mar-a-Lago and Donald Trump about classified information or even the existence of classified information to the Washington Post. But the Department of Justice, just like the Stasi, the East German Stasi of old, is leaking information to their, effectively, Pravda-like media, the Washington Post, the New York Times, CNN, and so forth. A document describing a foreign government's military defenses, including its nuclear capabilities, was found by FBI agents who searched former President Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago residence and private club last month, according to people familiar with the matter, underscoring concerns among U.S. intelligence officials about classified material stashed in the Florida property. So now you have the prosecutors and the investigators leaking about classified information that was not leaked at Mar-a-Lago by the former president or his staff to the media and for the entire world, while they're in court fighting the idea of an independent special master to go over their work and to see what documents they have a right to and don't have a right to. They already stole from him passports, attorney-client privilege information, tax information, other private information, medical information, clothing. They stole it, to use their phrase, from him. But do you remember Bill Clinton? Oh, yes. This is from the capitalresearch.org. As president, Bill Clinton essentially wiped out any strategic advantage the U.S. had by selling advanced U.S. missile technology to our enemy, the People's Republic of China. We should indict Trump, you see, because of what might have happened to his materials. Who may have seen his materials. You even have some crazy people on MSNBC going on and on about how he probably gave the information to the Russians so they could kill American spies, or he sold it to his friends, or he's going to use it to blackmail. And these are media corporations that allow these crackpots on TV to make statements like this, undermining our country. What else did Clinton do? One of the key technological breaks China received, without having to spy to get it, was the deliverance of supercomputers once banned from export for security reasons. So in the case of Bill Clinton and his administration, we don't have to do what if. This did happen. Supercomputers underpin the technology of nuclear missile warfare, and not only for firing and controlling the missiles. A supercomputer can simulate a nuclear test and is thus critical to the development of nuclear warheads. But according to a Washington Post editorial, in the first 3 quarters of 1988, 9 times as many supercomputers were exported to China as during the previous 7 years combined. This is David Horowitz's point. According to the Wall Street Journal account from Clinton days, a bipartisan congressional inquiry found Beijing has stolen U.S. design data and so forth and so on, lacked security in the Clinton administration, and of course, satellite makers Hughes and Loral are criticized in significant part, all during the Clinton administration. Not a debate over documents. What if? This happened. More, Obama, Washington Times, back in 2009. Obama recently shifted authority for approving sales to China of missile and space technology from the White House to the Commerce Department. You know why he did that? Because the Commerce Department is less involved in security and more involved in commerce than the White House itself. The president issued a little notice presidential determination, delegating authority for determining whether missile and space exports should be approved by China to Commerce Secretary Gary Locke. So they moved it from the White House to the Commerce Secretary. That's how serious they took it. Here's another piece. This one is from Business Insider. Obama just made a quieter nuclear deal with China. What do they mean by that? The deal would allow Beijing to buy more U.S.-designed reactors and pursue a facility or the technology to reprocess plutonium from spent fuel. China would be able to buy reactor coolant technology that experts say can be adapted to make its submarines quieter and harder to detect. Guess what? They've done exactly that. That's Obama. Biden. Instead of holding Iran, which is now building nukes, accountable, the Biden administration would not only remove the stigma of the terrorism designation on Iran, but reward it with billions to underwrite its activities, indeed as a general matter, besides temporary limits on nuclear work. The agreement Biden's contemplating is reportedly imposes no restrictions on what Iran can do with its windfall, not on terrorism, support for terrorist proxies, ballistic missile development, hostage-taking, and the rest of the atrocious menu. They're not even reporting this in any significant way. Instead, it's Trump. What if the documents got in enemy hands? Here's another one, Reuters. The U.S. Justice Department will end a program focused on fighting Chinese espionage and intellectual property theft, shifting from what an official called a myopic focus to address threats from a broader array of hostile nations. Our greatest threat, and this threat is stealing us blind on our military technology, is Communist China. And Biden just eliminated the program that focuses exactly on that. And why? Because among other things, they said, it looks like ethnic bigotry by focusing on the Communist Chinese. I don't want to hear this stuff. What if? What if this stuff that Trump had got in enemies' hands? What if? What if we have presidents who gave our highest technologies to our enemies? What if? What if?
Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Kilmeade. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to click to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page. This is the only way that I know for sure that you're not going to miss any great commentary, any great news bites, any great interviews coming your way on Fox. You can get it all here on YouTube. So subscribe right now.